everyone. Welcome to today's episode. If you have ever wondered about how you can unearth inner strength, confront past struggles, and embrace fearlessness, and be able to move forward, fulfill the call of God in your life, well, you're going to want to listen to today's interview with my guest, who is Tasha Wilson, and who is at the forefront of empowering millennial women, blazing a trail of inspiration and transformation. She's an international best-selling author, and she is a speaker, and she shares her journey of turning pain into power and breaking through barriers. She's known as Tasha W, Messenger of Hope. Welcome, Tasha, to the stage today.
Thank you so much. I'm truly excited to meet with you and to discuss this topic.
Awesome. I'm excited to have you today. Now, one of the things that I would love to speak to you about, but is about the whole area of how you are approaching, and you say this on your website as well, is that you have revolutionized mental wellness by reshaping traditional approaches. But before we get there, I would like if you would share a little bit about how you came to do what you're doing today. How did that journey unfold for you?
Yeah. So it's funny when people usually ask me that because it was something that I never saw coming. I really want to say it was God ordained. I've never expected myself to be a speaker, an author, being in spaces where I'm like in front of large crowds. Just a little context, I've always been extremely introverted, so small, intimate spaces are very comfortable for me. And so when the Lord was like, yeah, you have a story to tell, and there are people that you need to reach, and this is how I need you to reach them. It was very like scary, but yet liberating at the same time. And so for me, while actually going through the experience of doing the intentional inner work, rediscovering who I am after trauma is actually the same time that the Lord was using me to help other people and be an inspiration. And so, the way I see my life unfolding, even present day, is that a lot of areas that I focus on to help other people are things that I'm actually living out in the moment.
I love that. Yes. So, as a speaking coach, I often say that to people in terms of a lot of times people say, well, where do I start? As a speaker, what do I begin to talk about when I'm putting together a message? And one of the areas that I find is one of the most powerful is areas that you have overcome.
Yeah,
Areas that you personally have walked through, that you've gained a sense of authority and anointing in because you have overcome.
absolutely.
And so I love that you said that about this is an area that you've overcome, which adds a lot of credibility to how you help others as well, because you've done it. You know it works.
Yeah, they can actually see the transformation. And I think that helps with authenticity and vulnerability. A lot of times we see people who give like speeches and you can tell it's real textbook savvy. But when you see someone who you know it's their personal experience, and you may have people who see you from point A and then see where you are now, and it's just like, wow. I've seen the change. I've seen her do the work. um, Now I have the opportunity to do that in my own life. I think it's really helpful and powerful for other people when they get to witness that in real time.
So who are the kind of people that you work with? How would you describe them when they first come to you? What are some of the things that they're maybe struggling with or looking for that you can help them with?
A lot of them really struggle with identity. They often allow their situations to kind of paralyze them. For example, I have a lot of people who've dealt with family trauma, a lot of people dealing with sexual assault, a lot of people dealing with trying to discover their purpose. And so they usually come to me usually look at what they've experienced as a detriment instead of using it
Mm,
as a stepping stone. And so, a
mm,
lot of times I encourage them, like, if we were to strip away these situations, or if we were to strip away these labels that either others imposed on you or you've imposed them onto yourself, who are you at the core? And so, trying to get them to challenge how they view themselves, because I always say how you view yourself is ultimately how you love yourself and how you treat
mm,
yourself. And so, I know for me, it was just comfortable and easy to kind of go with the negative because that's all you've been told. But when you challenge that and you start unlearning certain things and really saying, I'm going to be courageous and confident enough to see what happens when I step outside of what's familiar, and really helping them get tangible tips on what makes sense to them to do that.
mm. That's so good. I love how you reframe that for them to bring them into another perspective of how to approach that is so
Yeah.
cool. So what one of the things that you have on your website that you talk about is that you help people to you've sort of revolutionized mental wellness by reshaping traditional approaches. Can you tell me a little bit about what that is? What do you mean by that?
Yeah, absolutely. So, especially in the Christian community, mental wellness is not often talked about. We're getting a little progressive now with talking about the importance of really taking care of ourselves and
Mhm.
what that looks like. And for me, reshaping it is really giving people the understanding that how can you really pour into the lives of others if you're not pouring into who you are. Like, you,
Mm,
it's one thing, like with discipleship, that you are called to fulfill purpose in the earth. You are called to accomplish certain assignments that the Lord has given you, but the Lord doesn't want you to be tired or overwhelmed by doing it,
mhm,
because the reshaping part is you're made strong in his image. A lot of times we carry on the burden and try to do things in our own might, and that's where the
mm,
burnout comes in. And so, really giving uh, people that I work with the understanding of the only way that you can be mentally well is if you know where your power source is coming from. Like,
mm,
everything that you're doing, it's beyond your control. Like, I didn't wake up one day and say, this is the life that I want for me. It all serves a purpose, and we just have to understand what that purpose is and
mm,
why we were the ones chosen to do it.
mm. So what would you say would be some of the traditional approaches that you help to kinda help them
Oh,
to
yeah. So, some of the traditional approaches is kind of putting everyone's needs before your own. And so then, you get to a point that you don't even have the space or the capacity to receive anything because you're now tired, you're trying to sleep it off, or you're just doing things haphazardly, right? And it's just kind of like doing things from a checklist mentality instead of a mission mindset. It really serves no purpose. And so, for me, a tangible example is just choosing a job just for the sake of choosing a job, but not really understanding why you're choosing that job.
Mm,
Because I feel like wherever you are, you still have to remain true to who you are. And so you don't know who you're going to encounter. You don't know what that person may be looking for that you connect with while you're on the job. And so you just don't want to go to the comfortability of complaining about things that you may not enjoy. It's like you could be the reason that the dynamics need to change. But if you're just choosing a job for the sake of, I know I'm supposed to work, versus what's the intentionality behind this job, then, it makes a world difference of how you're looking
mm,
at things.
hmm. Wow, that's really good. So, really being intentional about why you're doing things and whether or not it's something that aligns with who you are. Is that what you're saying?
Absolutely. And
Mhm,
a lot of times we'll know if we're not aligned, because you'll start having this feeling like, okay, something feels off. I don't know what that nudge is, right? Because everyone is in a different space in their walk. So you don't really know what it is. You're just kind of like, something just doesn't feel right. Or, I feel like I'm minimizing who I am, or I'm shrinking back to keep peace, or, I'm just kind of doing the minimum. I'm not even scratching the surface of what my gifts and talents are. That's usually how you know that you are not aligned. Like if you're in a space where you're not being celebrated and you're being tolerated, um,
Hmm.
you usually know that you're not in alignment with where you're supposed to be, and it doesn't give you the opportunity to grow.
Hmm. Wow. So tell me, I know that you often help people to do like even on a daily basis or some things that they can do practically. What would be some things that you'd want to share with our audience today that they can start to do to be able to feed their mental wellness or to really be able to align themselves with who they are?
Yeah, I think it's important of being intentional on how you start your day.
Mm,
Usually, how you start your day kind of gives you the momentum of how you want to sustain your day. So, waking up, just being grateful that you have another
mm,
opportunity to see a different day. And so, for me, I have a devotional journal that I read, and
mm,
it's really talking about different areas in my life, emotionally, spiritually, of things that I want to hold on to. So, like, say if I was dealing with anger, or I know that the response that I've had just haven't been really great. Knowing how I can kind of recharge that area in my life a little bit and say, okay, let me focus on this devotion that tells me, okay, it's better to respond in a loving way instead of, being strifeful or being impulsive, learning how to take a moment
mm,
to pause. And so look at the areas that you may find challenging, or that you may be inconsistent in. That is helpful. So, reading a scripture, um, spending intimate time with God is extremely helpful because it will always recenter your mind. Learning to let the worries of yesterday stay there and just start fresh.
mm,
Each day is a blank state. It's very important. And learn that you're also forgiven. I think we beat ourselves up a lot with how things may have occurred, whether it's 5 minutes ago, 5 days ago, whatever. Um, know that you're forgiven, and give yourself grace. And so I do that with journaling. I find something to kind of quiet my mind a little bit. Coloring helps. That's tangible. If you have a mind like I do that have 1,000 browser tabs up, you want to find something that kind of silence it a little bit to kind of get you back into recentering yourself. Some people walk, that's another tangible way to kind of just quiet your mind, kind of sit with
mm,
yourself. Pick up a favorite book that you've been putting on hold to read.
mm,
And then even painting helps. Usually
mm,
I may, pull up a video on YouTube and do like a paint by numbers or something like that. Just something that causes me to like pause and take a step back from the hustle and bustle of everything else that goes on.
mm. Those are great suggestions. And, in all of those, I hear you saying, do something that's going to feed your soul, that's going to really maybe make you alive or bring life back into you.
Yeah. Yeah,
Or
absolutely.
I know that you also talk about how important it is of who you surround yourself with as well, right?
Yes, community is very, very important. And that's something that I'm actually practicing right now. So sometimes we look at relationships based on the number of years that you may have known someone, but you have to understand that, the more you mature, the more you evolve, that sometimes you have to let those friendships go,
Mhm,
especially if it's not mutually beneficial. And so when it comes to community, being mindful of who has your
mm,
best interest at heart. Be mindful of who really wants to see you thrive, who really wants to see you win. Someone who can actually hold you accountable. Like if you're saying, you know what, I'm struggling with
mhm,
this, or, I no longer want to do those type of things or make those decisions. Have people in your corner that's going to be like, well, remember, we talked about this, and let's try to challenge this a new way, or let's try to approach this differently. Have those people that are going to tell you the truth and not wait until you fall and stumble and then
mm,
say, well, you know what, you should have done it this way, or you should have done it that way. Have people that can be honest with you. and people that you can be honest with, because that's also
Mhm.
important. They have to create that safe space for you to be honest about what you're dealing with, how you're feeling, and what your aspirations are. So having a
Mhm.
community of people who are also in alignment with where you are now and where you want to go is very important.
That's so good. I love that because, I think this is an area, especially as women, that there have been a lot of situations where women don't feel safe, or because
Mhm.
maybe they feel like there's competition or things like that, a jealousy. And I don't know if you've ever experienced that, but even, there's been some of that. And you're like, okay, so they're reluctant to share some
Yeah.
things because of those factors. But it is actually very powerful. I know I personally am a part of a community like that who is very, very, very supportive, and truly they celebrate you and want the best for you. And, each person is valued for who they are. And it brings so much freedom to be able to be in a
Yeah.
place where you can fully be who you are, and be free to even explore what
Mhm.
that looks like in a non-judgmental way, in a safe place. So I think a lot of women, men too, but I think a lot of women are really searching for those kinds of communities, relationships.
Absolutely. And when you find them, hold on to them.
That's
You
right.
know, because I've had those experiences where people that I may have met, 20 or so years ago, and they're still acquainted with who they met then and not the Tasha you see today, right? And so it's just like, I need you to move forward with me, right? Like, to understand that I am not that same person that you met years ago, and that it's okay if you don't have the capacity to be that friend or to be a part of the community that I need right now. But we have to be honest with that. And I think, we try to avoid those tough conversations. And it doesn't mean that we're no longer friends. It just means that um,
Mhm.
the access is different now, right? Because you have some friends who, their purpose may serve in one area of your life, and then there are those who serve in another area. So just recognizing who's who in the room is what I always say. Where are these friends placed? Who can you confide in if you need someone to pray with you? Who can you confide in if you have questions about furthering your education? And so really understanding how multifaceted your community is, and understanding that we all have a unique set of gifts to bring to that community.
It's so true. I remember years ago, I read a book, and I think it was I can't remember exactly, but I think it's called something like Friendships of Women. But what it did is that it opened my understanding as to, there's people in our life that serve different purposes. There's different kinds of friendships, different, and just like you said, some you would go to for this, some you would go to for this. And to be able to understand that not everyone, let me say, plays the same role in your life in terms of the type of friendship. They might be equally valued, but they
Yeah.
are not maybe the ones that you go to for advice on something else. Or some you just go with because you have fun with them. They're the people
Yeah.
that you have fun with, right? And that's okay. But understanding that is really important. And the other thing you mentioned, I think, Tasha, is really important, as you talked about seasons, in the
Mhm.
season of life that you're in, because sometimes we outgrow,
Mhm.
or just life happens where maybe the values become very different, or one is growing and the other isn't. And so it creates this obvious gap now in that
Yeah.
relationship that is no longer serving each of you, really. And so I think it's really important to understand that and to identify that, and such a valuable insight that you bring to the people that you serve as well.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Mhm. Yeah, it's huge because a lot of times people get into trouble, get stuck because they're hanging on to, at least I've seen this in my own life. I have been involved in mentoring and discipling women for decades, and I find that many hold on to, and I've constantly had to reevaluate my own at different seasons of my life, holding on to friendships, relationships, maybe because afraid
Mhm.
of, hurting those people or how it would sound, and
Yeah.
not knowing how to have a conversation with them. So all of those factors play a role, but understanding that it actually, I think about the scripture and it says to run the race, the run the race and let go of every weight that should hinder you. And sometimes there's things we're hanging on to in relationships,
Absolutely.
connections that's like a weight that's
Mhm.
actually holding us back because we're
Yeah.
afraid, right? We're afraid of just being truthful and honest about it. And or we have a people pleasing spirit rather than really
Mhm.
pleasing God ultimately. So such a valuable insight. So anything else that you'd like to share with our listeners today in this whole area that you'd want them to walk away with today?
Yeah, absolutely. Knowing that your path is tailor made and that you should not compare it to somebody else's journey. We can get caught up in the things that we see in social media that we feel like we're
Mm,
behind in life when it comes to certain things, but just know that God's timing is always better than the timing we try to place on ourselves, because God always knows best. God always knows the outcome. God always knows what we need. And so be patient in your journey. I said this earlier, but really give yourself grace. It's something
mm,
we often hear, but we don't actually apply it. And so, the same way we give grace to others, don't forget about yourself while you're
mm,
navigating through your journey. And lastly, whatever you're dealing with, things that you're wanting to overcome, just know that healing is not linear. There are
mm,
going to be ways that you're going to revisit certain triggers because certain circumstances may remind you of things that you thought that you've dealt with, but know that healing is not linear, and you will have a community of support for those who may be unsure of the friendships that they have in their lives and the relationships that they desire. God hears those prayers and he will send the right people in your life.
so good. I love that. Healing is not linear. That is so true. So, Tasha, if anyone wanted to follow you or touch base with you, what's the best way to connect with you?
Yeah, so my website is www.lifewithtashaw.com. I'm always on Instagram as well. That is lifewithtashaw underscore. And then I have a Facebook group, Tasha W Messenger of Hope.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Tasha. So good to get to know you today and to hear about how God is using you to serve those who are in your sphere of influence. Thank you for all that you do to bring hope to others.
Thank you so much. I really enjoyed today's conversation.
You are most welcome. Well, if you are listening today and you have found hope and inspiration, I want to encourage you to share this episode and be able to know that God has a purpose and a plan for your life that maybe something you can't see at the moment because you're in the thick of what's going on, to know that God is well able to bring about his desired purpose in and through your life as you lean into him. And if anything that Tasha shared today struck a chord with you and you want to know more, I would encourage you to seek her out on social media. And if you are looking for a community where you can thrive, where you can be supported and celebrated, by all means, click the links down below. You'll find some links down below of a community of Kingdom Alliance men or women that help you to be who God has called you to be. Because listen, God is looking for those who will say yes. God, I am ready to be used of you. I want all that you have for me, and I'm ready to step into it a big way. And there's so much work to be done. There's a harvest that's ripe and ready, and God is looking for those who are willing to be used of Him, to use their voice and their hands and their feet in every way. And the enemy has tried to hold you back, but we want to encourage you that your voice is an instrument of transformation, needs to be heard. It is bringing hope and healing to those around you. So we want to help you get your voice out there, get your message heard so that others can be impacted by you, because that's part of how the unique contribution that you're put on the earth to make. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in today. Make sure to subscribe and hit the notification button if you're on YouTube. And we look forward to seeing you next time at Speak to Transform, and have a beautiful day.